Good day to all of you. It is Tuesday, and I'm Brian, and we are here to make a video. And yesterday was extremely busy, but wonderful. And I'll share that with you later. But I finally got my office cleaned up, so I'm now having meetings and sharing photos and things there. But it took a lot of effort to get that place up and going, but it looks nice, and now I just have to keep my furry dog from destroying it. So anyway, I'm gonna give people some time to jump on here. What we're gonna be talking about is the wedding timeline, and we're gonna go through all the details of that. I'm actually gonna jump in there and kind of create a live one as we go, maybe two, depending on how long this all takes. Um, so anyway, I hope everyone's doing well. I What did I do today? I've been working on videos, editing photos. Um, don't have a whole lot, not a ton of stuff planned until March. It's just so nasty outside. No one wants to do photos. But in March though, things are going to explode. I've got so many things going on. I've got two trips planned. I am going to Kansas City the 20th through 22nd of March, and then Dallas the following weekend. And we've got, like, I think within those 2 weekends, I can't remember how many photo shoots I've got going, but it's going to be amazing. I'm going to get to see some places I've never seen before, create some stuff in just a completely new and different location. It's going to be interesting. All right, so I'm going to try and jump over to this, and let's see if I can present at the same time. All right, so I've waited 2 minutes. That should be enough for anyone who's going to jump on here. So we're going to talk about creating a wedding timeline. So that's basically an outline for your wedding day. It's something I help my couples create, but it's also something you kind of can do on your own. But it is extremely important. I can't tell you how many times weddings have had issues, and it's almost always a scheduling thing. Like, so much of it's just a scheduling thing. Either the schedule wasn't created properly, or something just got us off of the schedule. But most of the issues I deal with have to do with that. So if you can create a really well thought out schedule, and then people can stick to that schedule, things go so much smoother, and it is so much nicer and just wonderful. All right. So when do you need to make this? So this is why I made the comment on the page earlier. Even if you are like 12 months out, even if you are 8 months out, this is something you need to start considering right now, and something you need to look at right now. So here's why. You don't have to make like the most detailed schedule at the beginning, but there are a few things that you need to figure out pretty early. And the earlier you start looking at your timeline, the earlier you can make good decisions about some things. So, for instance, the ceremony time's a big one. You have to figure that out relatively early, because you're going to send out your, like, save the dates. You're going to plan things, and people have to know when the ceremony time is. And it's important to kind of like figure out the entire day, or at least a general idea of the entire day, before you say, okay, our ceremony is at 6 o'clock. So story about that. This happened to me last September, I believe. I don't think they hired me kind of late, so I wasn't really there to talk to them about the ceremony time and all that stuff. But they planned the ceremony time, I think, for 6 o'clock, maybe 5. I can't remember. Anyway, this is September, so when it gets darker earlier. So they planned the ceremony for 5 or 6 or whatever. They weren't planning on doing a first look, and I started talking to her. I was like, if it may be dark by the time that you're done with everything. And I tried to talk her into bumping the ceremony start to an earlier start time, and she just wouldn't do it, which was fine. But what happened was exactly what I was afraid of. So we did the ceremony. It lasted 30 minutes. We went and did family photos. We went and did wedding party photos. And by the time we got to the groom and the bride, it was already getting really dark outside. And so we didn't really we didn't get any, well, we got some, but we didn't get much of them. And it wasn't great quality because the light was just gone. And it could have been avoided just by listening to me or planning things differently earlier. Okay, so besides the ceremony time, eventually it will help you kind of figure out when to start makeup and hair and all of that. And honestly, I'm not an expert on that. I don't know exactly how long it takes. It's going to depend on how many people you have, but it'll also vary depending on, just your hairstylist and what all you have to have done. I think this is also kind of important. You can figure out a general guide of how many hours you're going to need your photographer or your DJ or some of those other people that stay there for multiple hours. So like when you create that basic timeline, you're like, okay, well, I thought I only needed a photographer for 6 hours, but it turns out I probably need him for 8 hours. We thought the reception might only last 2 hours, but I have to keep the DJ there for 4 hours now. So it's just a way to kind of figure things out earlier is better. Once you get to about a month, 2 months out, that's when you want that really detailed timeline. And I would suggest you get input from as many vendors as possible. Like I said, I don't know what is required of every other vendor. So I don't know how long it might take the cake people to set up. I don't know how long it takes to get the stuff on the tables and buffets or whatever. So I would talk to as many people and get their input when you're making this detailed timeline, so everything fits well and no one's like, I don't have enough time to do this, or no one's freaking out because you gave them 30 minutes and they need an hour to do whatever it is they are doing. And I can tell you, I've been on the other end where someone created a timeline and then threw it at me and I'm like, that's probably not going to work. I need more time than this to do that. And if you want me to do this, I need this much time. So it would have been a lot nicer if someone had talked to me about it before just creating something and throwing it in my face. All right. So some general tips. The biggest thing I can say is overestimate. It's better to have more time planned than to find out like, oh, that really took us a lot longer than what I thought. And that's how it almost always happens. It almost always takes longer than what you think. So when you're planning something, if you think it's going to take you 30 minutes, you might schedule it for an hour or 45 minutes, something in that range. But just prepare for something to take longer than it does. There are so many things involved in a wedding, so many moving parts. I mean, one person shows up late or one person forgets something or something happens to someone's dress or, whatever. Anything like that could set you back 30 minutes to 45 minutes really easily. And so it's better to have more time than not enough. Don't forget travel time. So if you are traveling, if you're traveling, you're getting your hair and makeup done at a hotel or an actual salon, make sure you're planning that travel time. If your ceremony location is different than your reception location, make sure you plan the travel time. If you're going somewhere for photos that's different than the location, plan for travel time. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that could be like 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and you're talking about 2 hours of time that you didn't plan for. Make sure you put a gap where you're not doing anything before the ceremony. Oh my gosh, I still remember this. This was when I was really early into wedding photography. My wife was still helping me at this point. And we talked about levels of service back like a week ago. This is when I wasn't really doing much for my couples. Again, I was fresh. This might have been like the second year I was doing wedding photography. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm pretty sure I did not make a schedule for them. But we got to the ceremony and it was probably like 10 minutes before the thing started, and I was out preparing, I guess, for the ceremony. My wife was back with the bride, and the bridesmaids decided to go smoke. So my wife is having to help the bride get into her dress, and like literally got her in the dress, and then she starts walking down the aisle. Because you can imagine how stressful that was for my wife, probably for the bridesmaids. So plan a chunk of time before the ceremony where nothing is happening. You're just chilling, hanging out, preparing yourself, because that you don't want to be stressed out and like rushing into that moment. And you also want to make sure you're hidden so people don't see you before the ceremony as well. Okay, don't cram in too many things. I'm trying to think of examples of this. If you can take care of a lot of stuff the night before, that's always a good thing. But just don't make the wedding day just back to back to back to back. This is happening. This is happening. This is happening. That stresses people out. I mean, you don't want people stressed out. You want them to enjoy the day and not to just like hate it. And the last part, this is where we're going with this. If you have someone who can guide you, who can help you, I would say get their advice because they probably know better than what you may or may not know. So I have provided a template. It's in the top of the group. It's I think it's the first post marked up there. It's in emails, whatever. I would suggest downloading that template and at least taking a look at it. Is that the last slide? It is. So actually, I'm going to jump out of this. Boop. Let's see if I can get back to just looking at myself for a second. Hello, there I am. So what I'm about to do, I'm going to actually jump in to the template, and I'm going to try and create, we'll see if I can do both. I'm going to try and create 2 wedding day timelines. This is just me making stuff up because I don't have a real person in mind. But you can see how this template could possibly work for you. All right, so I'm going to go to that. And then I'm going to go back to these. And then I'm going to share my screen. And there it is. Okay. So this is what it looks like if you haven't seen it. It's just a PDF document. It has some stuff explaining it, so you might want to read that. But the big thing is there are 2 different versions. There's version with a first look, and then there's a version without a first look, the more traditional way to do this. We're not going to get into that discussion again of whether you need a first look or not. So I'll just start with this one and we'll kind of see how to do this. So here's how I do this if the ceremony time is already set in stone. I start with the ceremony time because that is what is locked in. That's the thing that's not going to be moving. It is there. It is what it is. So we'll just say this ceremony starts at 5 o'clock. Okay. So moving backwards then, roughly 4:25, I guess I'll put some things in there. Roughly 4:25 is when that relaxation time, that break starts. So you have at least 30, 35 minutes before the ceremony begins where you're not freaking out and having to do stuff. You can get your makeup retouched. People can go to the bathroom, all that stuff. And again, then I start moving backwards. And these next few things can kind of be moved around. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in this order. The other thing, you see I have like chunks of time, 15 to 30 minutes. That's going to vary depending on the size of your wedding party, but also your personal preference. I have some people that want to do like 100 things with their wedding party, and I have some couples that want to just do the very basics and be done with it. So you just need to kind of figure out what you care about and kind of figure that into there. So we'll just go with, we'll say 25 minutes because that's going to make things nice and even. So maybe we start wedding party pictures at 4 o'clock. Yeah. And again, some of this stuff I would flip flop. It depends on how things go. Bridesmaid photos then would be roughly at 3:30. So probably have the first look at 3 o'clock, and most likely all this, you can probably get this all done in 30 minutes, I would say. Yeah. So I would say that's probably about right. Something like this. And again, if I was really doing this, I would think about this a lot more, and I'd think about the couple and what they want and what they're interested in. And I probably would add more time than what I am currently saying in here. Okay, so that means roughly, and the dress thing is also a big thing. Some dresses are super easy and fast to get into. I've had other dresses take 30 to 45 minutes to get into. This goes back to, if you do a bridal session, you can try this out and see how long it actually takes your mother to get you into the dress. But you need to figure that out. If it's a zipper, you're going to be in pretty quickly. But this is why we're planning this, because again, I've had people take way longer than we thought getting into the dress, and it just kind of screws everything up. So we'll say start that at 2:30. So that gives it 30 minutes to get into the dress. Before that, we're doing the guy photos. No. So we'll say they're relatively easy. We'll just start it at 2. Details at 1:30. And again, guys, I'm moving really quickly, but okay. So so the photographer would arrive roughly around then. That's at least, that's more than 3.5 hours before, right? Or is that? No, that's right at 3.5 hours. So there you go. So that'd be roughly 3.5 hours before the ceremony begins. And makeup and stuff, you can figure that out on your own. Okay, so run through this real quick. I show up, I do detail shots, people hanging out, the girls getting ready. At 2 o'clock, then I'm with the guys. I'm getting photos of the guys getting ready. I'm getting photos of the groom by himself, the groomsmen together. Then 2:30, I run back in, and the bride hopefully is at that point ready to get into her dress. Hopefully it doesn't take 30 minutes, but you never know. Then we get everyone in position. We do the first look, and I do some photos of the couple together. We bring the girls out. I do the bride by herself, the bridesmaids with her. Then we have the whole wedding party, and then we're getting ready for the ceremony. Okay, so this is honestly how I would schedule this out, so I know exactly how to do this. Now, from here, a lot of it usually can depend on either two things. If you know how many hours your photographer is going to get, so let's say you have your photographer, what did I say? That's 3.5 hours there. So let's say you have your photographer for 7 hours. You've already spent 3.5 hours there. So if we start at 1:30, then basically your photographer is done at 8:30. Okay. So if your ceremony is 30 minutes, family pictures would start at 5:30. And they probably, it's probably going to last. Well, we always put about 30 minutes on. So couple portraits at 6. If there's any kind of travel time, we put that there. So we'll just say there's not travel time. So 6:30 is when they do the entrance. Okay, so now you're seeing where this may be a problem with the time. They are showing up at the reception at 6:30, but the photographer's having to leave at 8:30 if they paid for 7 hours. So either two things can happen here. You can try and cram all this in here, or you might keep the photographer for another hour. And again, this is why, honestly, why I'm looking at this stuff and why I'm showing it to you. Oh, my dog just moaned really loudly. It's important to look at this beforehand so you have an idea. Is it going to all fit? Am I going to be rushing to get through a reception for 2 hours to get all the stuff done? Is that going to be enough time to do everything? Do I want to do a fake exit? Do I need to add more time to my photographer? Okay. So again, this was me quickly sketching this out. You will take more time and you'll figure things out. So I think we have time. I'm going to see if there's any questions or anything. Don't say anything yet. Okay. So let's look at it from the traditional looks. I know a lot of you wanted to do the traditional. So same thing again, I would, if we'll say the ceremony begins at 5, so 4:25, bridesmaids at 4, bride getting into her dress. And again, some of this stuff can be moved around. It doesn't have to always be in this order. A lot of that kind of depends on whether or not the bride is ready. Okay, and then 2:30. All right. So in this situation, I'd be showing up roughly 2.5 hours before the ceremony. I do a lot of the same things, but then there's that stuff I can't do because you aren't seeing each other. So show up, do details for 30 minutes, then I get the guys and do the guy stuff. Go find the bride. She's getting into her dress. Take the bride and the bridesmaids out and do photos for a few minutes. Then everyone runs inside and hides. Ceremony begins. We'll say the ceremony lasts 30 minutes. So then family photos will take about 30 minutes. So 6 o'clock, we start doing wedding party pics. Again, this depends on how much time you want to spend with them. We'll go the long route just for fun. So they did 30 minutes of wedding party pictures, which is a long time. And then couple portraits, we'll say that took 30 minutes. And then 7 o'clock is the grand entrance. So again, I'm not trying to push one way or the other. I just want you to see again, if you don't do a first look, there is an hour and a half at least where you're, an hour and a half where your guests are sitting there waiting for you. So make sure you have something for them to do. Okay, so again, let's look at if you had 7 hours of coverage, 2 to 9:30. You're pretty much in the same situation you were before. You have to decide if that's enough time or not. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else important about this to look at. As far as like the extreme details of the reception, I normally don't plan the reception to the minute because it's hard to know. It's hard to know what people are going to be doing. It's hard to know how long things are going to take. So usually like all this stuff right here, the first dance, cake cutting, all that stuff, I go with the flow usually on that. And I just kind of talk to the DJ and I talk to the planner, and it's kind of one of those things. Okay, everyone appears to be done eating now, so let's move into this. Or they need more time for this, so let's not do that yet. I just find that it goes a lot better if you don't have to have exactly 9:15 is when we are doing the garter toss, because things in a reception aren't always set in stone. Okay, everyone might start leaving and the exit might have to be at 9 o'clock. You don't know that. Okay. So if you have any comments or thoughts about this stuff, feel free to say something. I'm about to jump back to staring at my face. And there I am. So like, honestly, guys, I can't tell you how many times things have been thrown off because of not planning or not even thinking about it. For example, I had a wedding. It was a week ago. Yeah. It wasn't this last Saturday, but it was the Saturday before that. And they were doing the ceremony at one spot, and they had rented this place for an hour, right? So they had rented this place for an hour. So the thought was do 30-minute ceremony, do some family photos, and then be gone. Well, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if they did the rehearsal and it didn't line up. But the ceremony was still going over an hour into it. So like I'm looking at the lady that's at the venue or at the place, and I'm looking at my clock and it's been over an hour. So they were already supposed to be out of the place. They were supposed to be already gone, and the ceremony was still going on. Luckily she was extremely nice and helpful, and she let me stay 30 minutes later with them to do the family photos and stuff. But she could have kicked us out, or she could have charged them extra money for going over. So again, you've got to think about the timeline. You've got to think about how long things are going to take. Do a run through, figure it out. But if you do not, it can really, really mess up your wedding day. If you have not figured out this needs to happen here, it's going to take this long, then this is going to happen. It's just better to be prepared and better to have a good plan versus just being surprised and be like, oh, whoops, we have no time left and we have to leave. Okay. Let's see if anyone's commented or said anything. I don't think so. So guys, again, this document is for you. It is, there's a link in the group, and I suggest you download it and at least look at it and kind of figure it out. Feel free to ask me questions about how I would do stuff. I mean, if you really want, I might even, and my collar's all messed up. I might even just give you a real quick rundown of this is how I would do it. But feel free to reach out and I'll see what I can do to help you guys. Because again, I'm here to help you. And I can't think of anything else. All right, guys. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if I can do anything for you. Have a good one.